This is Moments with Fu with James Fu Torres, better known as Fu, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet, hear their stories, and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their success into your life and business. Moments with Fu is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Fu.
Welcome to Moments with Fu. I'm your host, James Fu Torres, but you can call me Fu, hence the name of the show. And today, I have Amber Welch. She's an expert in the Web3 and AI field, or the AI industry. She's doing amazing projects right now that we were just talking right before and starting recording. But I'm going to let her tell you more about that. But first, Amber, how are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
I am doing super fantastic. It's a little early for me to, I typically don't record 8 a.m., but here we are because you're amazing and I wanted to have you. So let's get this going.
Yeah, I'm an early riser. Sorry about that.
No, me too. I just I haven't done yoga and I haven't done my things. I typically kind of finish up at this time, so then I was getting ready. I also woke up at 2 a.m. randomly, and I was awake for a little bit, and then I went to sleep again. So that was another thing that happened today. So, but anyway, we're good. I'm feeling good. I'm ready for this. I know this conversation is gonna be amazing. So let's kick it off with a quick introduction about yourself and your company.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm Amber Welch, for those of you who don't know me. I am the CEO and founder of 3 separate entities kind of operating in the Web3 space. One of them is a podcast where I talk to underrepresented individuals that are contributors in this ecosystem. So people who don't otherwise get a platform at conferences as easily and are doing really amazing things. And then the second company I have is called FinTech Consulting. We do fractional work across finance, operations, digital marketing, product strategy, and fundraising. So a wide breadth of knowledge there. We're actually getting ready to add tax as well. And then the third and the company that I'm currently most excited about is Navi AI. And that is an up-and-coming product. We are actually going to be pre-launching that product here in about a month, with the final product going live by late fall. And Navi is super cool because of the one thing that I have found in working with over 300 companies in the last 2 years alone, is everybody has the same issue. They don't know what they don't know. And for founders, it's really hard to find that information. And so with Navi, they can go and use AI to search finance, regulation, and compliance, which are the 3 areas most frequently missed, but the highest cost to access, and get sourced answers to their questions around those topics that tie to the regulation, the codification, and even better, they've been verified by licensed professionals. And you can also find those licensed professionals based on how much they're actually in there, making sure those answers are correct, that have already been vetted. So we're really excited to see how that changes the failure rate of startups, if we can help lengthen some runways. And then just real quickly, a little bit about me as an individual. I've actually been in the fintech space for about 22 years now. I started my career double majoring in computer science and finance accounting. Spent about 6 years or so as an auditor in public accounting in the States, and then moved into the corporate world where at my largest, I worked at Lenovo with a global team of over 50, helping oversee their $56 billion in revenue at that time. And then moved into the Web3 world by taking a role as a partner at an accounting group, completely built out their Web3 practice vertical from 0 to over 40 clients in about 9 months. And then asked myself the question, why the heck am I making money for someone else when I don't agree with all the foundational ways they're doing it? So I started FinSuite first, right after the podcast, in the hopes that I could change the dialogue and how things are done to be more transparent, more favorable to the founder, and not so much about the bottom line, because I hate that.
I love that you're doing that. So it's something that aligns with my values aligns with my purpose, my mission and vision. And that's why we clicked right away after we connected on LinkedIn, because of that, because I told you a lot about impact and how I use marketing as a way to amplifying the impact of people that are doing good in the world. So then my indirect impact becomes exponentially higher. And I remember that resonated with you. I mean, and clearly because of those, that's kind of what you're dedicating yourself to, is to make it more than just the bottom line, but really to make the world a better place. And like helping founders where there's a 90% failure rate, that's a great place to focus, because I mean, just what an improvement or of a small percentage in there could represent so many families being fed, so many good things to the world happening, because obviously you will support the people that are doing something good, right, based on your values. So I really like that. And after so much preparation that you've had, having you to be in this space, which is innovating both space, right, the Web3 and the AI, and having you as the forefront, right, like with the podcast, having the conversations, and then actually now with this company that got funding, fully funded, and now you fully like hit steam with full head of steam ahead, right? And that's something that I'm very excited about. I'm very excited to also like help in whatever way I can, because I believe in that. I mean, seeing that as a source that is kind of like Reddit, but then with third-party validation, with real professionals, and professionals being incentivized to be there, because not only they want to help, but also they get leads from that. Because when people are like, okay, I actually need a professional now, the people that have been asking, or the professionals that have been answering those questions are the perfect people to hire. Now, like, they've been answering your questions, it's all validated, and then boosted with AI to make it more digestible, more efficient. That sounds like an amazing project.
Thank you. Well, and the goal too is it's not just about helping feed leads to pros. I think like the one thing that I've seen time and time again, especially more and more recently, is there's a lot of companies that are trying to get into this ecosystem, right? Take advantage of the fact that there's a need. And the problem and benefit there is a lot of them, the majority of them, don't know what the heck they're talking about. And so the issue is when founders are trying to find good resources, such as your company or my other company, or the slew of really good lawyers and CPAs and other professionals, they don't know if those people actually know anything about Web3, because they're telling them they do, but they may have no clue. And so why stack the deck against them? They have a big enough battle. And these projects that I've been seeing for the last 2 years are really societally impactful. These aren't just people shilling a token trying to make money, though I know some of that exists. These are projects that are aiming to provide things like power to small third world or underdeveloped nations in other continents, or provide a means of assistance. Like a great example of this, there's a lot of companies that have been working in hyperinflated nations to help them have access to actual money, right? Because of their own money is so diluted, hyperinflated, and corrupt that they can't even do regular day-to-day business. And so these are the type of projects that I want to see succeed. And I think one thing that you mentioned that's really worth noting is we kind of have this great opportunity for a redo. I know we really connected on that. And for me, the way that I think about it is, obviously industry has existed for hundreds of years, starting with bartering. There's a great book called The Bitcoin Standard that really goes into the beginning of money, before money was money as we know it, and how that came to be, and how Bitcoin or other tokens can, obviously the book's talking about Bitcoin, but how it is now. And I think one thing that people forget is just because something has always been done a certain way doesn't mean that's the best option, right? So like historically, a lot of business functions have been done in a manner that aren't equitable, that aren't inclusive, that aren't really geared toward the benefit of everybody or those who maybe don't have as much. A lot of them are very capitalistic in a way that's not healthy. And so when we're looking at opportunity here, we have a chance to completely turn all of that on its head with this emerging tech. And I'm not talking about just my company, I'm talking about the ecosystem as a whole. And so if we all take the chance to lead by example and show that, hey, we can actually do it this way, and it not just be successful, it be incredibly successful and benefit the entire world in a multitude of ways, why the hell wouldn't we do that? So for me, every day that I get up and start my day, my whole focus of that day is how can I serve other people? In what ways are the choices I make during the day going to help someone else achieve their goals? And how can I remove myself from that? Because I found that if you do that, you'll still achieve what you want to achieve. I don't lack for anything I need. It doesn't mean I have everything I want, but by default, the relationships I build are stronger, the impact I have is greater, and I'm helping to actually make a difference for others in a way that's beneficial.
That's such a great way to go about life in general, of just focusing on really helping people and serve them in a way that it's making their lives better. And if you do that enough times, the money would just flow to you. The things that you need would just get to you, because it's just a lot of reciprocity, right? Like you get what you're putting out. So not having to worry so much of nickel and diming all the time, and really just worry about the outcome, like how much value am I bringing to this person's life, to this founder's life, to this business, to the world, and then just have almost like faith that it's like, look, everything is gonna be okay because I know that I'm doing the best that I can with what I have to make the world a better place. And one little caveat thing that I want to say is to make sure to not give from a cup that is not full. It's something that I learned recently that I want to share in here, because we need to fill our cups first. That's the best way that we can actually help the world. And then when with the overflow, like if we do so much good and we bring so much good into our lives, we're going to have an overflow of good things coming out of our cup that doesn't even fit our cup. Like we have our cup full already. So that overflow is what you should attract people to then get from that overflow. Not let me empty my cup to give it to somebody else, and then I end up with an empty cup or a half empty or half full, cup. Because then if you don't have your cup full, then you're not gonna be able to give from a whole place, right? So that's one little caveat that I want to add there, right? Like, don't be a martyr. Don't be oh, they're just gonna give everything and just be in complete poverty and necessity just because I'm giving everything. But yes, go ahead at life with just giving, and things are gonna work out. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the interesting thing too is I've not had to do any business development, and I think that will change, right? Like with the launch of Navi AI, I know there's going to be business development required. It's a software. However, to date, I have clients that are some of the largest names in the Web3 ecosystem. These are huge companies that everybody knows, and I've not sought them out. They came to me. And I really, truly believe, based on what they told me, that it was because of someone said, hey, you'll really like the way that this person runs their company. You're never going to have to guess where you are. You're not going to have, an invoice that you're not expecting. And she delivers what she says, and her team does too. And so I just think, why wouldn't we give what we have, not what we have left, right? That's I actually heard that from an amazing person when I was visiting Cuba. Last September, I went there to interview somebody that is working in the tech space, of all places, a very impoverished, very unbelievably humbling experience for me, just seeing how much different life is in a communist country that is so closed off from so much of the world. And one of the people I met there, that was what they said to me is, you know, because I was talking to him about like the difference being a US citizen, how I feel like when I'm here, and I'm a veteran, I think you are too, correct?
Yes,
You
I
both
am.
are vets. So, you know, I signed up when I was 18. I think you signed up pretty young. And the thing is, that's a really big decision when you're young to say, hey, I'm willing to give my life for a country of people I don't know. And the hindsight on that has been really insightful for me because of one thing that I've noticed now being well traveled around the world is in the US, people have this tendency to be very worried about their own self, right? Everything is about their space, their self-serving nature, whatever. And I'm not saying that across the board. I know there's exceptions to that. But when you get outside of the US, it's typically different than that. And again, not across the board. I'm sure there's plenty of selfish individuals that don't live in the US. But what I've noticed is the majority of people have this attitude outside of the US of we're all in this together. And so like that was the thought that was shared is don't just give what you have left, which is kind of a very American mentality, is, hey, if I have anything left, I'll help you out. Maybe if I'm in a good mood and it's that kind of day, right? And so it really made me stop and think about my approach beyond just like wanting to do good out there. So I do agree with you, but I do think that like it's important to understand yourself well enough and have an honest conversation to find that balance. And it's something founders, I think, struggle with. I'm sure you've seen that as well, where they're so focused on what they're trying to achieve that sometimes they forget that there's multiple ways to go about that. So like I've commented and I talk a lot about it on social media as well, which is I don't gatekeep my time. I freely share my schedule. I typically, like today, I literally have back-to-back meetings the whole day, which is exhausting. But I have found that when you're willing to put other people ahead of yourself and not say that your time is more valuable, that when you need it, people show up. And so like for me, it's not about, oh, what am I going to get out of this? It truly is about like, hey, what are your goals this year? How can I help you? And I have seen the coolest things come out of this change, like this focus for me. And this all stemmed, like this piece stemmed from, I saw somebody post on LinkedIn about how they were basically gatekeeping their time, that it wasn't worth their time to even respond to some people. And I thought that was such an a-hole attitude, to be honest, and so against my personal like brand, if you want to call it that, or personality, that I responded and I'm like, I don't do that. I absolutely don't do that, because even if I'm fortunate enough someday that these companies, like if Navi AI becomes a unicorn, which I fully believe it can and will, I want whoever is at the very bottom of that org, right, to know that they are every bit as important as I think I am, because it takes every person, not just me. And that's kind of like, that's just how I function in every way. So, I mean, like that was a really long rambling way to say, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. And one thing that came to mind during what you're saying here is that people are willing to carry a heavy load as long as they choose the load, you know, and that's what I'm getting from you. It's like, look, I'm willing to go back to back. I'm willing to do all these things and give my time to everybody because you're choosing to, not because you have to, right? And that's a very, it's a good thing to point out in here from my perspective, because it's if you were not choosing that and then you feel like, oh, like this is just like forced on me and I feel like this is draining me, then you wouldn't be able to really help, because you wouldn't come from a place of like wholeness because you feel like you're drained, right? So that's my point, not just to
100%.
give, right? Not to give from just what's
100%.
left, right?
Well, and even when you are freely choosing to give, I think you have to gut check yourself on the regular. So about a month ago, I realized that I was struggling a little bit with burnout. And it's a common thing, right? Like across the board, it doesn't matter what level you are, especially in the US, we have this mentality of go, go, go. And so we work, and when you think about it too, here's the thing. If you think about 25, 30 years ago, when computers were just starting to really roll out across common use, we didn't carry around a computer in our hand called a phone all the time, right? I mean, there were cell phones, but they were very different things then. They were like whole suitcases. And so when someone wanted to complete a task in an office, that report might take them all week because it was a manual process. Now we have basically reduced those processes down to minutes, if not hours at the most. So while we might still be, even if you're working a normal 40-hour week, you're doing 10 times the amount of product that you were 25, 30 years ago. So no matter who you are, burnout's a very real thing. And so when I realized I was starting to get to like that wall, I had to gut check myself and say, okay, I want to be everything for everybody, but I also have to recognize that I'm very much a human being. And that means that if I'm not doing like you said and making sure my cup is filled enough personally, that the value of what I have to give is very, very much diminished. So I made myself have a policy, which I always have with anybody who works for me, and that is balance. And so I've started taking a day off a week that I wasn't previously. The burden as a founder is definitely different than the burden as an employee. I feel obligated to work a lot more hours. And so giving myself the grace to say, it's okay to take all day off and just relax and recoup. And, and then the other thing that I do, and this has been a habit I've had for a long time, but I think is just a very valuable me time thing. And I was telling you about this, is I get up at 5 a.m. every day and I go work out. Now, that's not everybody's cup of tea, but for me, it really fills my cup to go spend an hour-ish in the gym lifting weights and keeping myself in the best health that I can. So I think it's really important for people to be honest with themselves and understand their personal burnout signals, because everybody's are different, so that you can then kind of find a new equilibrium and readjust and keep balance.
That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. Because that's exactly where I wanted to go with this, and thank you for getting there. I really liked it, and I think that's great advice. And from there, like, you kind of start talking about what you do to kind of fill your cup, so to speak, right? Like taking the rest day to kind of, like, I would add. Making sure that you're resting, but also do something that gives you pleasure, right? If just watching TV and just like being there gives you pleasure, then go at it. If you rather just go outside, go in nature, go to play go karts, whatever the case may be, just go and do that gives you pleasure, and then that fills your cup, and now you can go back and to work. And one other thing that you mentioned was exercise, and then you mentioned just you want to be as healthy as possible, and that's something that it's a big focus for me. It probably, like, my top focus is really to be as healthy as possible, so I can then be as efficient as possible. Like, I can work really hard when I am healthy, right? And I can, and because I choose to, right? So I love feeling good. I love feeling like I can go for hours working, go for hours on a hike, go for hours on like physical activities and things like that, even things that are either fill my cup in the pleasure space or fill my cup in the fulfillment space of, doing work for clients and things like that. But it all starts that I'm capable to do that because I take care of myself. So I wanted to add that because I think you did it very beautifully, and I just kind of wanted to add a little bit more of that for the advice for people. Oh, look, I see a cat.
This is Mila.
Oh, hi, Mila. She wants to be in the podcast.
It's my work bestie. It's one of the benefits of being a remote individual and working from home. There's plenty, but that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, that's one of the big ones. I think when the 2020 happened, a lot of articles came out that I saw in videos of people talking that the people that, or the beings that benefited the most were pets, because they were like, oh my God, all my humans are here all the time. And then there was
Yeah.
like
Well,
the
and
flip,
kids too, right? I mean, like
right?
one
Kids
thing,
too.
I mean, talking about like making sure you're doing things that bring you happiness and pleasure too. My family has this habit, and we have since my children were born, of we eat dinner at the table together every night. And so even if I'm going to work 14 hours, I will take a break every night and go sit down and have dinner with my family and talk about our day and connect. So I think like just to kind of bring it back around to what you were saying is it's so important to understand balance. It's so important. It's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice when people come up, and I do have other founders and young people coming into the space, and women especially, that will come up and they ask me like, they'll think I'm superhuman. I'm like, I am far from it. Far from it. And I'll tell them like, here's what my typical day looks like, but it's not like that happened overnight. We're talking about years of learning what works for me and having honest discussions. And I think that's why I'm such a big fan of transparency, because if we stopped acting like things had to be gatekept, if we stopped talking about things in code or pretending that like, hey, it's LinkedIn, we're not allowed to say things, or we can't call out the bad actors, or whatever it is, if just in general we were more transparent, honest individuals, how much more happiness and balance we would have in life, and how much more successful things would be.
I completely agree. Completely agree with you. Now, but between both of us, I mean, especially you've given a lot of advice in here. Is there any other advice or maybe some actionable tips that you have for the audience, given your expertise?
Specifically around finding balance and just like this topic, or in general, or
pick your poison. It could be Web3, could be AI, could be self-development. Just what,
sure.
I have an audience of there a lot of founders. Like that's mainly my audience. So giving your expertise in life, let's say, right, like combining with professional and personally, what are some maybe one or two last takeaways you want to leave them with?
Yeah, so I would say for founders that are listening, probably the biggest piece of advice I would give is, even if your budget's limited, find people that you can trust and ask advice. So I didn't get to where I'm at as a single person on an island. I have had a village of people that I've built relationships with and have then helped me on this journey. My best friend in the whole world is another founder and freely has given me help. And that's how we became so close. And so I think like understanding that the people you surround yourself with and serve will really define how successful you can be to some extent. So don't waste your time surrounding yourself with people who you don't want to pour into. I would say people that you want to pour into are the ones that will also pour into you in a positive way. And also don't sleep on professional services. And I'm not saying that from a selfish, like, come talk to me place. In fact, some of my closest friends in this ecosystem are technically my competitors, and I send people their way all the time because if I know that those companies and what they need are really specifically going to be benefited by them more than what my company could for whatever reason. But what I see over and over from founders is they think, oh, I'll get to the finance later. I'll get to, the BD, marketing, legal, like you name whatever professional service. And the problem is when you're playing cleanup, you're going to spend way more money than if you just spent a little less at the start and figured out. And if you're not sure how to make that happen, then you can come ask my advice. I'll meet with anybody and talk to them and help them have the introductions they need for that. Probably from the personal side, it's don't ever stop gut checking yourself and don't ever stop questioning how you can be better. And I know that's like a really broad statement that sounds like an easy thing for someone to say, but if your focus is always on each day removing a little bit of yourself and your selfish nature from what you're doing, you're going to find that eventually that becomes the norm for you and it's less hard. Ironically, to take a real quick sidetrack here. When I was growing up, I really struggled to have friends and spent a lot of time kind of on my own. And I remember distinctly when I was probably a freshman in secondary school or high school for US citizens, like that call it that. I remember having this discussion with this adult that was like the parent of someone I knew, not a friend, just someone I knew. And I was like, I don't understand why nobody likes me. And she said, it's not that they don't like you, it's that you make everything about you. And she said, every human wants to make things about themselves. It's human nature. She's like, so if you stop focusing so much on thinking if you explain yourself enough, being enough, or whatever that is, and start focusing on them and trying to connect with them, ask them questions, make it about them, they will naturally want to be around you more. And so for years, I really, really struggled with that. We're not talking like 2 years, we're talking like decades. I did not figure out until I was in my 30s really how to connect to other people in a way that could be beneficial, not just for the relationship, but just in general. And it felt very weird to me for a very long time and very fake. And then eventually it got to this place where now it's very normal for me to talk to people and say, hey, what do you need? How can I help? I want to know about you. And the thing is it's very fulfilling. Even if I don't tangibly get anything from it, I feel really good. I go to bed feeling good because I know that like what I'm doing throughout my day is really about making things better beyond my little individual circle. And it has completely changed what the world looks like to me. It has made my world so big in such a positive way. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice I would give to people is stop focusing on yourself so much and really focus, as awkward as it feels, on others, and you will get it back tenfold in ways you could never wrap your brain around.
I completely agree with both of your like main statements, right? Which is look, you have no money, go out and like ask people, pour into people that you want because you really want to add value to them, and then like those people typically reciprocate, right? So I completely agree with that point. And one thing that you said, it was, oh, you can get this for free. But in reality, nothing is free. You're giving energy a different way because money is typically a way to give energy because it's just like a centralized thing that we all agree that this has this intrinsic value. And then that's why it makes it easy to trade things with money. But in reality, you're trading that when you get free advice, quote unquote, right? You're just paying in a different way because you are adding value to that person. That person feels like, it feels like a good use of my energy to give to you, give this knowledge to you, because they might just see it as an investment. They just might see it as a fulfillment in the moment. Who knows, right? They can see it in different ways. But that's one thing that I say, like, nothing is really free, but not everything has to be about money. Like, I see
100%.
everything that is just energy, right? And money is just a way to give energy, right?
I guarantee you there's founders and people out there sitting there thinking, I'm absolutely nuts, this doesn't work, that are basically devil's advocating against everything I just said. And that's fair, right? But I can actually give an example that it does. So I had no idea I was going to start Navi AI. I just saw an issue that I kept seeing with companies over and over and over. And when it came down to it and I was making introductions for these people and doing all of these things, I was giving energy. So there was a trade, right? Like you said, I was giving my time, my energy. The payback for me was that I was hoping that those people I was introducing them to, it would benefit the ecosystem, it would benefit adoption, it would benefit societal change, all of those things. For me, that was the payback. And so ironically, all of that energy and focus on caring about others first, it did come back to me, and my company is still self-funded. I know you said it's funded, and I'm going to explain how it's a little different than typical. But I know this works because when I decided that Navi could be something, an actual tangible product that would benefit the ecosystem beyond just Web3 into Web2 and all startups, I realized I'm bootstrapping this. I have very limited funds. I mean, very limited, probably a smaller budget than just about anybody you've ever spoken to. And I'm not an engineer, even though I have a comp sci degree. It wasn't in, coding and Rust or anything else. And so I had no clue like where to even begin. And so I had conversations with people I trusted about what that required beyond like the advice I normally give to my clients. And from me pouring into others, the board of advisors that I have includes 6 or 7 of the absolute top individuals in their fields across UX, product, legal, compliance, AI, you name it. And then I had an introduction to who became our primary investor. And they are basically some of the most talented individuals you meet. We're talking about someone that's running the build of my project that came from senior engineering for over 10 and a half years at Google. Someone that I could not have afforded, even if I had done a raise the traditional way, to hire in the environment that we have now. It's so competitive. All of those things have come from introductions from people who I have just poured into with no expectation out of. And so I have this incredible suite of people who are now on my team. I have a product that is going to be to market and technically in its own way funded. Didn't have to give away any of my equity in the process, by the way. And I'm going to have a tangible product that is making revenue before the end of the year. And this idea only was a year ago. So I've done all of this in less than a year, and I truly believe that the reason it's been so capable to happen so quickly is because of when I poured into people, it was with no expectation out of it. And so when those introductions happened, I got quality options. And so that's why I'm like, I know this is going to be a big thing, and I do think it's doable. You just have to take the focus off of self.
Yeah, and that which is the main point that you made here at the end, which it kind of connects everything, right? Is to not make it about yourself and really add value to people without expecting anything, and just trust that the universe will give it back to you one way or another, right? And I really like that. And one thing that got me thinking was as an advice that as a takeaway that I can leave people with in this podcast, which I talked about this in many other episodes, and is a great way to lead with value is to have your own platform when you like something like a podcast, right? So for you, like I reach out to you, it's like, hey, look, you're doing some cool stuff in this space, and I want to just talk to you. Would you want to be in my podcast? And you were like, hey, let me have you in my podcast too. And then we started trading value that way and building a relationship. And now we keep enforcing it, right? As we keep doing this, we keep talking, and then who knows, who knows what's going to happen now because of this, right? And I go with the agenda, and it doesn't have to be a podcast, right? Like you can give value many different ways. This is just a hack that I found, to be honest, because I love having conversations, and building a podcast is really not that hard, especially if you collaborate with other people to do it. And it's a great way to lead with value. And I go with this agenda of, I just want to make a relationship. That's it. Like that's my goal. That's the only intention that I have, is I just want to add value and hopefully make a relationship with this person. Whatever happens after organically will happen just by like I said the right things or they said the right things, and there's like, hey, actually I think you can help me, or I connected them with somebody and then ended up being something. So, right. So I always go with that. That's my goal. That's it. I just want to build a relationship, and that's it. And the rest just happens organically. So that's how I apply that principle, right? That advice that you gave of, and make it about other people. And then on top of that, what is a podcast? I mean, it's interviewing somebody, giving the chance for them to be the spotlight, right? It's like, hey, come here and talk about you, what you're doing, and give advice for the audience, so they can after listening to this podcast, they can take action, and they can have takeaways, right? They can be like, okay, great, mindset shift, or actually things that they can go take action, like go start a podcast, for example, right? So that's what I wanted to like kind of close with this.
No, I agree with you completely. I think it's excellent advice.
Thank you, and thank you for your excellent advice too. So now, just to kind of wrap this up, who are you looking to connect with, and how can people find you?
So easy to find. LinkedIn, just look up my name. It should be the first thing that pops up. And I can share that over to you to share in show notes or whatever. As far as companies, if you're looking for anything fractional that isn't what Foo offers, then it's finsuiteconsulting.co. And if you're interested in Navi AI, which we are pre-launching next month, and then formally launching later this year in probably November, you can go to naviai.app or reach out to me and I'll make sure that you are included in our initial list. There will be a huge benefit to being part of that. So I highly recommend, if there's any interest there in checking it out, that you reach out. And then the podcast that I host is called Hackers. Should be able to find that pretty easily. All of my accounts are tied and kind of similar branding, so it's pretty easily. If you find one, you can find the others. All of those podcast episodes are also available on FinSuite's website. And probably the biggest need I have right now is really related around Navi. It's going to be building out the people that will gain value from that product, making sure that they have access to it. And then we are still technically fundraising, though we do have what we need to get the product launched. We are open to discussions with investors about the future and what this product can be, because we are going to be launching initially US and Web3 only, but we do have lofty plans for and have already had discussions with other governments. So we will be hopefully in 2025 launching Context in multiple Caribbean islands, including Cayman, BVI, Bahamas, and more. And then beyond that into Europe. And then we also are hoping to launch into other Web2 sectors such as edutech, health tech, etc. So definitely open to discussions around more investors and getting us there faster.
That's it's amazing. I definitely want to be part of that. So make sure that you send me the links and stuff as soon as you're ready to the pre-launch. I also want to share it with my network of professional service professionals. That's who I work with, especially people in the tax space, which there's a lot of need of people asking questions online. So obviously that's a big plus, and you know that very well. So I'm excited for this. Very excited. Being able to meet you and interview you, be in your podcast, and then this is gonna be great. I mean, if it turns into a unicorn, even better, right? And I'm excited to see how this unfolds.
Well, I really appreciate that you had me on today to chat.
Thank you for taking the time. This was an amazing conversation. So this was Amber Welch and Foo, and this is us signing off. Peace.
Thanks for listening to Moments with Foo with your host, Foo. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next episode.